Hello, everyone. Recently, I came upon this post, or skeet, I suppose it's called, on Bluesky about an essay by Evgeny Morozov about AI after socialism. Morozov's essay joins a long list of not particularly distinguished articles, essays, papers by academics about so-called AI that try to make very clever, complicated articles, or rather arguments, I should say, and ignore, because they're very idealist in nature, ignore the material reality of the industry itself and just the basic capitalist function that it's fulfilling, which is trying to expand into ever more areas of our life for profit. I'm going to read from this essay published in The Ideas Letter. Earlier I said The Ideas Newsletter, but it's actually called The Ideas Letter magazine. I'm going to read this essay pretty much fresh and just react to what Morozov is saying as best I can. And when I say as best I can, I don't mean that he's making some sort of super complicated arguments, because he is not. I mean, while trying to keep my blood pressure down, because this sort of thing is encountered over and over and over again. That is to say, those of us who challenge the primary narratives of the industry and the industry's useful idiots, we're a bit exhausted because they are relentless. And I suppose we have to be relentless too. Now, to give you an idea of just who Morozov is, or at least a hint of some aspects of his history, consider the fact that he was, about 10 years ago or so, accused, quite plausibly, quite accurately it seems, of pretty extensive plagiarism. I'll just let that hang out there. By the way, links to all of these essays and articles are in the show notes. So let me bring up the article and begin reading, and then react as seems appropriate to me. So, Socialism After AI, published in the Ideas Letter, December 11th, 2025, by Evgeny Morozov. Artificial intelligence has produced a rare kind of popular curiosity, not only among investors and founders, but among people who open a browser, type a question, and feel, however inaccurately, that something on the other side is thinking with them. That phenomenology matters. Whatever we think about hype, hallucinations, or OpenAI's capitalization table, AI arrives as a technology whose uses are discovered after deployment, whose boundaries are porous, and whose side effects appear in places nobody designed for. Quote, generative, end quote, is not just a marketing word. It names a genuine instability. Well, we really are starting out of the gate with quite a bang, aren't we? No one has designed for the uses of AI, and yet it has to be designed. It's an engineered thing, and of course it's marketed, its purposes, or at least its alleged purposes, are marketed, such as what Microsoft is doing in the education space. So generative, of course, here you see Morozov doing something that academics will do. And by the way, I don't mean to be particularly cruel or harsh to academics. I do make a distinction, though, as Gore Vidal did in his day, between academics and scholars. That's something to discuss another time. But yeah, here we see Morozov just sort of going a bit ham, grabbing onto this word and making it more exciting. But let's continue. For socialists, this instability poses a specific challenge, and their reflexes are familiar. Regulate platforms, tax windfalls, nationalize leading firms, plug their models into a planning apparatus. But if socialism is to be more than capitalism with nicer dashboards, if it really is a project of collectively remaking material life, not just of redistributing its outputs, it has to answer a harder question. Can it offer a better way of living with this technology than capitalism does? Can it deliver a distinct form of life worth wanting rather than just a fair share of what capital has already made? Second paragraph is no better than the first. These questions were answered quite some time ago by people such as Rosa Luxemburg, who actually gave her life continually and relentlessly stating exactly what needed to be done in order to move past capitalism. And also, how in the world would you define socialism as simply trying to regulate things? In what universe is that socialism? Certainly not one that people who actually have socialist commitments would understand. That sounds more like liberalism to me, but let's continue. Once you pose the problem like this, something embarrassing happens. Something embarrassing appears. For a tradition obsessed with maximizing productive forces, socialism has been remarkably quick to bracket some of them from politics. It treats technology as a neutral kit to be dropped into better institutions once these exist. Take railways, nuclear plants, or language models. If capitalism misuses them, socialism promises to finally aim them at the common good. The real question, however, is whether even the most ambitious recent socialist theory escapes this limitation, or whether it reproduces neutrality at a higher level of sophistication. Now, this sounds promising, of course, because it is absurd to declare that a technology is neutral. So Morozov seems to be righting himself, although this particular paragraph contradicts what he said in the beginning in many ways. Now we get to something rather interesting, so let's dive in. Aaron Benanav's proposal for a multi-criterial economy, developed in 2 lengthy essays in New Left Review, offers a test case. His diagnosis is that both capitalism and classic state socialism are organized around single criterion optimization. Capitalism around profit and state socialism around gross output. That worked brutally as long as rising GDP could serve as justification. In an era of stagnation, ecological breakdown, and care crises, it no longer does, at least not in the global north. Sadly, the peculiarities of the global south do not much figure in Benanav's analysis. Not quite sure what he means by peculiarities here, but let's continue. Benanav wants an economic democracy that takes multiple, incommensurable goals seriously from the start. Ecological sustainability, work quality, free time, and care are treated as distinct goods that cannot be crushed into a single index. The balance between them is composed and recomposed through explicit political choices, rather than discovered by a market or a central algorithm. To this end, he proposes a dual monetary system. Individuals would receive non-tradable credits for personal consumption and a basic income. Firms and public bodies would transact in points that could only be used for investment and production. Investment would no longer come from retained profits, but from democratically governed investment boards that would allocate points across projects according to multiple criteria. Now, this is starting to get a bit strange to me because, of course, the idea, no pun intended, is that we're supposed to be talking about what so-called AI means under socialism, or I suppose after socialism, or rather, let me correct myself, socialism after the ushering in of AI. That is the point here. So far, we're going a bit further afield and focusing on the work of Aaron Benanav, who has done some very significant work, but not sure where Morozov is going here. Let's continue. In this model, coordination is handled by sectoral and regional councils of workers, consumers, community representatives, and technical experts. They are aided by a data matrix, an open, democratically governed statistical and modeling system that tracks flows, maps ecological and social limits, and makes trade-offs visible. If we decarbonize at such a pace, build so many homes, and shorten the working week by this much, here's what follows. Markets persist but lose their profit logic. Firms cannot hoard earnings or decide the long-term direction of the economy. They complete over performance on democratically chosen metrics, not over returns to private shareholders. Technical associations organize labor, training, and expertise across sectors. I mean, so far this sounds like the sort of thing that was imagined under Cybersyn and earlier in the history of the Soviet Union. Again, I'm not quite sure where Morozov is going, but let's be patient and press on. Benanav insists that values are not fixed, drawing on the Austrian polymath Otto Neurath. Here we go. The American pragmatist philosopher John Dewey and others, he argues that priorities evolve through conflict, learning, and experience. Plans must be revised, criteria adjusted, and institutions rebuilt in light of what happens. Socialism, in his picture, is inherently experimental. He even carves out a publicly funded free sector for artists, movements, and associations to explore new forms of life and value, feeding their innovations back into the official criteria. As a vision of post-capitalist institutions, this is unusually detailed, but it rests on an assumption that socialism's historical failures were failures of procedure, too little democracy, too crude a criterion. What if the problem runs deeper? Point an unstable technology like AI at Benanav's carefully drawn architecture, and cracks appear that no amount of democratic procedure can seal. Aha! Now this is interesting, isn't it? What Morozov is arguing here is that Benanav has kind of given us a sketch of a potential future situation that would involve algorithmic systems. Not sure if Benanav actually talks about so-called AI, but certainly computation and software would play a role in the model that, at least according to Morozov, in the model that Benanav has laid out. But Morozov is telling us in the final sentence here, AI is unstable. It's a destabilizing technology. It's wild. No one controls it. It's like, I don't know, subatomic particles, perhaps. The difficulty does not reside in any particular blueprint. It's structural. Socialist thought has organized itself around a series of dichotomies: productive forces versus relations of production, base versus superstructure, means versus ends, and in each case, it has placed technology on the neutral, instrumental side with the conveyor belt, the nuclear plant, the language model. Under capitalism, the wrong class bends this machinery to its purposes. Under socialism, the same machinery gets redirected to better goals. I just wouldn't compare a language model to a nuclear power plant, but maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me, the person who understands, say, I don't know, gamma radiation maybe a bit better than Morozov does, or maybe he understands it quite well. Let's continue. Of rich critical tradition, much of it in socialism-adjacent fields rejects this neutrality thesis. Marcuse showed technology embedding domination, not merely serving it. Harry Braverman, name-checked by Benanav, showed how Taylorist machinery de-skills workers by design. David Noble went further, demonstrating that automation itself was not technically determined. When multiple paths existed, capital systematically chose those that transferred knowledge from the shop floor to management, even at the cost of efficiency. From a different direction, Cornelius Castoriadis argued that capitalist technology materializes a capitalist imaginary, unlimited expansion, rational mastery, quantification, and cannot simply be repurposed, at least not until a different imaginary is in place. Andrew Feenberg synthesized several of these insights by describing technology as ambivalent, suspended between trajectories that democratic intervention can alter. And here I will pause again, because how annoying is this? I'm sorry. This sort of tsunami of mentions. I do understand the need to support your argument with arguments made by other individuals working in adjacent fields or people whose work you respect, but still, we've done a lot of reading and we've only heard about other people's thoughts. Let's continue. But these insights almost inevitably cash out as theories of workplace restructuring or democratic procedure, how to reorganize labor, how to open technical discussions to participation. They really transformed the macro-institutional imagination that would ground socialism as a wholesale and systematic, rather than a merely ameliorous and procedural alternative to capitalism. Here he is repeating again this idea about socialism being something that only wants to reform. When socialists design whole economies, technology reverts to hardware that a different class will use better. Benanav, for all his sophistication, works inside this template. The demos and the investment boards determine criteria. Firms and technical associations implement them. Technologies are instruments. So far this really does seem to be as a person on Bluesky noted, just an argument between two academics. We've heard a lot about what Benanav is getting wrong here, haven't we? All right, let's press on. I think I have a beer waiting for me. AI doesn't quite fit this template. Oh. It makes postponing the question concerning technology, to use Heidegger's phrase, oh my God, Heidegger, in a register he wouldn't have recognized, harder to get away with. A large language model trained on cheaply scraped text. Cheaply scraped? Tuned for fluent plausibility and monetized through metered access is not simply statistics at scale. It is the material expression of a particular world. Venture capital timelines, advertising markets, data extraction, intellectual property arbitrage. That's a very fancy term for stealing, my friend. The conversational interface that makes the model feel like an interlocutor rather than a library was a product decision designed to encourage specific forms of use and attachment. Wait a minute, Evgeny, didn't you say earlier that no one's designing anything? The safety layers encode a particular sense of what is saleable, polite, or risky. Well, those safety layers don't work too well, do they? A system like that does not simply respond to existing social relations. It crystallizes them and feeds them back, presenting them as common sense. Even the prevailing definition of AI as closed, general-purpose models in distant data centers accessed through chat condenses a series of capitalist choices about scale, ownership, opacity, and user dependence. Yeah, but that's the material definition of what this actually is. In the next paragraph, and I'm starting to get a little tired because this is going on, now imagine a future in which a multi-criterial investment board, under pressure to avoid bias and misinformation, mandates that AI systems be fair according to agreed metrics, respect privacy, minimize energy use, and promote well-being. Call this woke AI by democratic mandate, an infrastructure whose outputs are correct, diverse, and balanced. Yet it still feels like it was designed over our heads. The ham-fisted fairness tweaks to image generators that tried to hardcode diversity have given us a foretaste. They were mocked not because diversity is a bad aim, but because it appeared as a static parameter to be satisfied rather than as a transformation emerging from changed social practice. A multi-criterial AI governed by investment boards risks repeating that pattern by treating values as checkboxes rather than as meanings worked out in the messy process of using and reshaping the tools themselves. This really is absurd. So, first we have a very vague definition of what AI is. Then we're told that, oh, no one's really designing it, it's just going on its own. Then we spend a lot of time just going over how wrong Benanav's idea is. Then we, quote-unquote, test this idea in this fantasy world, more fantastic even than Lord of the Rings, for God's sake, in which we have, put into place basically guardrails, which we know in the real world don't work because of the nature and because of the structure of how large language models mix data and instruction sets. That's a technical thing, Professor Morozov. Is he a professor? I have to look that up. This entire paragraph is a wild diversion from reality. And this fixation on Benanav is really starting to sort of grate on the nerves. I'm going to read one more paragraph because I've been doing this for a minute and I think that everyone's had enough, and you'll have a link. You'll be able to finish it yourself. You know what? Come to think of it, I'm going to stop right here. This essay is 3,816 words long. The length itself is not the issue. I moved ahead, skipped ahead a few paragraphs, reading, and what I'm detecting is, well, a leitmotif. We just hear more about how wrong Benanav is. We hear about how AI, so called, is just breaking all the rules and forcing socialists to have to rethink things. But it's all quite vague. And I think that I've had enough because I think we know what the gist is. You can check the show notes to read this for yourself if you dare. I suggest you have a beverage of your choice with you. Have no other stress in your life if you're a person who has been resisting AI, as it were. This essay is, well, it's a bit of a mess, but it's sort of a grand mess. It's like it's like a chateau. It appears grand from the outside, a neglected chateau, I should say. It appears grand from the outside. There's just so much going on. Then you go inside, and the walls are falling down. And the bathroom doesn't exist. There's holes in the wall, and so forth. We really don't need more of this sort of thing from academics, but sadly, I imagine we're going to get more of it. Thanks for listening, and I hope you're doing okay.